She sets down the dive log, and a second later, her hand is at the back of my neck under the salt-dried hair, and I feel it the way you feel a current shift in open water, through the whole body at once before the mind catches up. My hands go flat on the reef map. I stop breathing in any way that could be called meaningful. Her mouth finds my temple and stays there for a beat, and then moves, unhurried, with the specific patience she applies to everything she finds worth measuring, toward my jaw. Her hand in my hair does not move. It does not grip. It holds, with a precision that suggests she has known exactly this weight and this placement for longer than tonight. And then she says it, low and specific, against the hinge of my jaw. You've been in every frame. Not a complaint, not a question. An observation delivered with the same calm register she uses to call depth measurements in the water, and what it does to the inside of my sternum is something I would describe, if pressed, as structural. If you want to hear uncensored too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. The expedition contract specified 2 researchers, 1 field station, a 14-day survey of the Adriatic Reef System between the 2nd and 3rd island chains. It specified equipment, methodology, daily dive windows, and the reporting structure for the institutional partner that had funded Mara's work for the last 3 years. It had a clause about equipment liability and a clause about weather delays and a clause about specimen handling protocols, and it had said nothing specific, nothing measurable, nothing that could be logged, about what happens when the 2 researchers have been trusting each other in 20 meters of water every single day for 11 days and come back to the same 4x5 room every single night with nothing else for 12 kilometers in any direction. I had briefed myself on Mara's published work before the expedition. I do this with every assignment, the way a surgeon reviews the case file before the incision. Methodically, without sentiment, because sentiment in the water will get you killed, or at least lost. And because I have found that understanding the lead researcher's priorities before I arrive saves the kind of friction that eats field time. I had read all 3 reef surveys, both methodology papers, the citation counts, the institutional affiliations. I had read the abstract of her most recent work twice because the spatial modeling was genuinely elegant, and I wanted to understand it well enough to photograph it, which is different from understanding it intellectually and requires something closer to comprehension from the inside out. What the papers had not prepared me for was the handwriting in the dive log. She keeps it in a ruled field notebook, the kind with the waterproof cover, and the handwriting is her character made physical. Exact, unhurried, with no wasted strokes, every entry dated and timed and cross-referenced to the dive map quadrant with a precision that should be sterile and is somehow not. I had been reading it over her shoulder every evening since night 2, when she had first opened it on the table between us and begun transcribing the day's observations. And she had never once angled it away from me or told me it was preliminary data or asked me to wait until she had finished. She had simply written, in that handwriting, and I had read what she wrote, and that had been the entire protocol. 2 women at the same table, every evening under the same lamp, one writing what we had seen, one watching her write it. The expedition contract had not specified this either. I had briefed myself on her professional reputation as well, because that is the other thing you do before an 11-day field assignment in close quarters. You know who you are working with, or you know the version of them that exists in institutional records and professional biography. The reputation that existed in institutional records described a scientist of exceptional rigor, methodologically demanding, not known for collaborative warmth in the field. One colleague, in a professional network conversation I had found, and not meant to remember, had used the phrase exacting but fair, which is the kind of description that tells you someone found working with her difficult and is being careful about it. Another had said she doesn't waste motion, which I had read initially as a warning and had since revised. She doesn't waste motion is accurate. What it does not capture is that her economy of movement, in the water and out of it, has a quality that I kept failing to find the right technical category for. In the water, she is precise the way a current is precise. Not mechanical, not without force, but without deviation from direction. On the surface, in the station, at the table with the dive log, the same. She does not use gestures that do not mean something. She does not speak to fill space. She moves through rooms the way she moves through water, with the particular assurance of someone who has learned to read the medium they're in and has stopped fighting it. I had not been prepared for that either. The papers do not convey it. Tonight is night 11. The dive log is between us on the table and has been for the last 2 hours. The underwater photo I printed 4 days ago is still on Mara's side of the table. I had printed it for her review, a frame from the Eastern Quadrant dive that I thought captured the reef density better than my field notes could. And she had taken it and set it down on her side and had not moved it back, and I had not retrieved it, and neither of us had noted this aloud. The reef map is between us, requiring both pairs of hands to hold flat. It has been requiring both pairs of hands to hold flat every evening for 11 evenings, and I have stopped noticing that I notice, the specific proximity this requires. 12 kilometers from the nearest settlement, the Adriatic directly outside, night 11. She unrolls the final survey section just after 10 and weights the corners with her laptop and my coffee cup, using my coffee cup without asking, the way you stop asking when asking has become unnecessary. And the map is the largest of the series. A comprehensive chart of the reef system's western ridge that we have been working toward since day one. It requires both of us to lean in from opposite sides of the table to read it properly, and Mara leans in from her chair with the unself-consciousness of someone who has stopped tracking the geometry between us. And I lean in from mine, and we are 18 inches apart across the surface of the western ridge chart, with both our faces warm gold in the desk lamplight and both lit cool blue from the laptop screens. And this is not different from last night or the night before. This is the protocol. This is what the data review looks like. I am aware of her braid over one shoulder, the end of it looser than it was this morning from the full day in the water. I am aware of the way her technical quarter zip sits open at the collar from the station's warmth. It is warm in here past 10, the station holding the day's heat in its walls, and the black of the architectural underwire bra visible in the open zip. I am aware of these things in the category of visual data, which is the category I have been filing them under for 11 days, because I am a photographer, and visual data is my professional orientation, and this is therefore a reasonable filing system, and I have been in no hurry to examine it more carefully. She traces a reef contour on the map with one finger, the index finger of her right hand, following the ridge's western decline with the same unhurried precision she brings to everything, and talks through the data. Coral density in the upper ridge section. Temperature variance between the two survey quadrants. A notation she wants to add to the methodology section about the current pattern we identified on day 8, which had made the eastern quadrant dive more technically demanding than projected. Her voice at this hour has the quality it gets past 10, when the day's professional register relaxes into something that is still precise, but no longer performing precision for anyone. It is the voice she uses for the dive log and for the evenings, and it does something to the back of my neck that I have been cataloging under ambient sound quality for 11 days and have not recategorized. I am watching her face. I have been watching her face for approximately 3 minutes when I notice that she has stopped talking. The sentence was about the Eastern Survey Quadrant, the reef density gradient along the northern slope, a measurement we had both been in the water for on day 4. She was midway through a clause about the gradient's correlation with the temperature data when she stopped. And the stop is not a natural pause, the kind that comes when a thought needs reformulating or a measurement needs checking against the log. It is different. It is Mara in the middle of a sentence deciding something, and the decision ending the sentence before the sentence ends itself, and then Mara looking at me. She is looking at me. I have been looking at her for 3 minutes while she was looking at the map, and now she is looking at me, and I am looking directly back at her, and there is 18 inches of reef map between us and neither of us looks at it. She finishes the sentence. She does this the way she does most things, because she decided to, not because the sentence required it. The eastern quadrant, she says, gradient correlating at 0.73 with the temperature differential from the upper current layer, and then nothing. And then she is looking at me with the specific stillness she brings to things she has decided to examine carefully. And I am looking back, and the desk lamp is warm gold on the map between us and the laptop screens are cool blue on both our faces, and the Adriatic is directly outside, and the station is entirely quiet except for the wave interval and one laptop fan. Something in the room has changed. I know this the way I know current change in the water, not by sight, not by reasoning, but by the body registering it first and the mind arriving afterward to confirm what the body already knew. Something in this room has shifted by a degree so small it would not show up in any instrument, and both of us feel it, and neither of us moves. And the reef map is between us, and we are both looking at each other across it and not at it, and this is not what the evening was scheduled to contain. The moment passes. or doesn't pass exactly, but moves into another shape. Mara straightens slightly in her chair and looks back at the map, and I look back at the map, and she makes a notation in the dive log in that handwriting, and I watch her do it because that is what I have been doing for 11 evenings, and because I have filed this behavior under standard field protocol, and I am not examining the filing. She writes without looking up. Her left hand rests on the edge of the map, while the right moves across the log page, and the left hand is 3 inches from my right hand on the table surface. And I am aware of this in the way I have been aware of every proximity between us for 11 days. Cataloged, categorized, assigned to a professional drawer, the drawer closed. I have been very organized about this. I look at the underwater photo on her side of the table. It is a frame from day 4, the Eastern Quadrant dive, the one she referenced in the sentence she finished before the sentence finished itself. I shot it in the lower visibility of the northern slope, 22 meters down. Mara in the mid-frame, with one hand raised in the signal she uses when she's found something significant. The reef behind her in the green-blue specific to that depth. The light from her dive torch cutting across the coral density at the angle that made the frame work. It is one of the better images of the expedition. I printed it for her review because it documented the reef density measurement better than any field note I could write. I set it on her side of the table, and she picked it up and looked at it for 40 seconds and set it back down on her side, and it has been on her side of the table for 4 days. Neither of us has noted this aloud. The coffee cup on the map's corner is mine. She used it without asking because asking has become unnecessary, and I think about that for a moment. The way asking becomes unnecessary, the specific point at which 2 people in close quarters stop requesting permission for small things because the permission is assumed, because the closeness has established an ambient agreement that neither of them explicitly made. I think about the dive log, which she has never angled away from me. I think about the photograph, still on her side of the table, 4 days later, both of us pretending not to notice. I think about the way she calls measurements underwater, quiet and specific, already accounting for the current. And what my body does when I hear it from 2 feet away in the green-blue silence at depth. I am very aware of what drawer I have been putting these things in, and how full the drawer has become, and how much pressure a drawer can sustain before its organizational function becomes theoretical. She looks up from the dive log. She says, looking at the reef map rather than at me, "You printed the frame where I had my hand up." It is not a question. It is a statement delivered in the same register she uses for observations. This is what I observed. This is what the data shows. This is what I am choosing to say aloud. She's looking at the map while she says it, at the Western Ridge contour her finger traced 20 minutes ago, and her voice has the quality it gets when she is being careful. I say, I know. This is not an explanation. It is not, technically, an answer. It is the minimum accurate response to a statement that was not a question, and she knows that, and I know that, and neither of us pretends otherwise. The word sits in the space between us with a weight I would not have predicted for 2 letters. She looks at me then. Her forearm is resting on the edge of the reef map, close enough that I can feel the heat differential from 2 inches. She runs warmer than I do, has run warmer for 11 days, a fact I absorbed during the first dive when she surfaced beside me, and the warmth of her was perceptible, even through the temperature differential of the water. From 2 inches across the map edge, I can feel that warmth, specific and involuntary, a heat that my body registers before I consciously think to register it. I press my fingertips harder against the map's edge. I am not sure when I started doing this. I have been pressing my fingertips against the map's edge for the last 4 minutes, and I look down, and there are small dents in the paper where I've been pressing, and I look up, and Mara is looking at them. She looks at the small dents in the map's edge for a moment. Then she reaches out with her right hand and smooths them with her thumb. She does this once, a single slow pass of her thumb across the paper surface where my fingers have marked it, and she does not explain why. She does not explain why. She does it with the focused attention she applies to things she is choosing to give attention to, which is different from the attention she brings to things that simply require it. And when she finishes, she does not move her hand away from the map edge. She leaves it there, her thumb at the edge where the marks were, and neither of us speaks. The Adriatic pulls back from the closest rocks outside. I hear it, the specific sound of that withdrawal, the space it opens before the wave returns, the way the station goes briefly quieter when the water recedes and then fills back in when the next wave comes. I have heard this sound every night for 11 nights. Tonight I hear it differently. Tonight I hear it as a measure of how quiet the room has become. Her thumb is at the map edge. My fingertips are at the map edge. There's perhaps an inch between them. The wave comes back. I look at her hand and I look at the inch of map between her thumb and my fingertips, and I think, in the dry, precise internal voice I use for things I would rather not think in complete sentences. She smoothed the marks I made. She put her thumb on the paper where I had been pressing, and she smoothed it without saying a word about why. And now her hand is still there, and the drawer I have been so carefully maintaining for 11 days is doing something I would categorize as structural failure if I were being clinically honest about it. I am trying to be clinically honest about it. I look up. She is looking at the map. The braid over her shoulder has come a little looser. A strand from the end of it has escaped and rests against the collar of her quarter zip at the edge of the visible bra strap. And I notice this in the part of my brain that is apparently still operating a visual data catalog despite the structural situation with the drawer. She moves her thumb back from the edge of the map by 1 millimeter, then stops. Then she says, still looking at the map, "Move your hand." I wait 1 beat to be sure I have understood. She is looking at the map. Her thumb is at the edge of it, 1 millimeter closer to hers than it was a moment ago, and her voice was quiet and specific, and she has not looked up. I move my hand from the map edge, lifting it slightly from the table surface. She takes the map by the corner where my hand was and rolls it once, just enough to close that section, and sets it flat again, and when she releases the corner, her hand is at the map's center, closer to my side of the table than before. She has not looked up. She is looking at what her hands are doing with the particular quality of focused attention that I have been watching for 11 days, and will apparently continue watching until one of us does something about it. I do not do anything about it. I watch her hands on the reef map, and I breathe with the specific care of someone who has decided that visible evidence of breathing carefully is worse than invisible evidence, which is a calculation I am apparently now running, which tells me something about the state of the drawer. The desk lamp is warm gold on the map between us. The laptop screens are open and cool blue. Outside, the Adriatic. The station is entirely quiet except for the wave interval, which has not changed, and 1 laptop fan, which has not changed, and the sound of whatever is happening between us, which has. She looks up. The quarter zip is open at the collar from the station's warmth, the black underwire bra visible in the opening, and she has pushed the sleeve of her right arm up sometime in the last hour. I did not notice when. And 1 arm is bare from the shoulder where she rolled the sleeve to look at the dive map more easily. The bare arm is resting on the map, and the heat of it is perceptible from my side of the table, and she is looking at me with the specific quality of attention she brings to things she has decided to examine. She says, looking at the map first and then at me, "You printed the frame where I had my hand up. I know you have the full series. You chose this frame. This is also not a question." I look at the photo on her side of the table. The photo has been on her side of the table for 4 days. I look at it, and I look back at her, and I say, with the dry precision I have been applying to things tonight that are too large for straight lines, you never moved it back. She looks at the photo. She looks at me. Her jaw does something very small and controlled that I have learned over 11 days to read as the specific movement she makes when she is deciding whether to say something she has already decided to say. It is a preparation. The way you prepare before a significant measurement, not because the measurement is uncertain, but because it deserves the correct approach. She says, "No, I didn't." 3 words, the weight of 4 days. My fingertips are flat on the table surface beside the rolled section of the map, and I am pressing them down into the table. The way I was pressing them into the map, and I am watching her with my whole attention, which has been the condition of most of the last 11 days, and which I am now no longer filing under professional engagement. The Adriatic outside moves through its interval. The wave comes and goes. The station structure settles once, a sound like something releasing a long-held breath. She reaches across the reef map to where my hand is resting at the table surface, and she sets her own hand over it. Not a grip, not a direction. A placement, her hand over mine, the heel of her palm against the back of my hand, warm in a way that registers through the skin before I process it consciously, and her hand is entirely still. She places it there and holds it without moving, without pressure, with the particular quality of stillness that is not absence but its opposite. A stillness that contains something, that is specifically holding something in place. I feel the weight of it, the specific heat of her palm, the way the contact spreads from the point of placement outward across my hand in a slow warmth that has nothing to do with ambient temperature. I do not move. She does not move. The quarter zip is open at the collar, and the braid is loose at the end, and one sleeve is pushed back, and the bare forearm is connected to the hand that is over mine. And I am aware of the architecture of this. The way her arm crosses the map, the distance it bridges, the specific decision of setting your hand over someone else's and holding it without explanation. I am aware that she has her hand over mine on the reef table at 12:24 in the morning on night 11 of 14. And that neither of us has moved for what I calculate to be approximately 20 seconds. And that 20 seconds of total stillness with someone's warm hand over yours in a room that is otherwise entirely quiet is not nothing. It is not a thing that can be placed in the professional drawer. The professional drawer is what I might charitably call compromised at this point. My breathing is controlled. My breathing is not controlled. My breathing is controlled in the sense that I am making deliberate choices about it, which is different from it being controlled in any organic sense. And the difference is apparently visible because she is watching me breathe. She says quietly, "Leave the map." 2 words, "Leave the map." As though we were still discussing the map. As though the map were still what we were discussing. I lift my eyes from her hand over mine and look at her face, and the desk lamp is warm gold and the laptop screens are cool blue, and she is looking at me with the expression she brings to things she has decided to say before she says them, and she is waiting for whatever I am going to do. I leave the map. I leave it in the sense that I stop looking at it, stop organizing what is happening between us around it, stop using it as the official reason for the last 2 hours of close proximity. The map is on the table between us and her hand is over mine, and 11 days of careful filing has apparently reached its organizational limit, and I stop pretending that the filing system is still functional. She leans forward. Not much. 3 or 4 inches across the table, the quarter zip falling slightly further open at the movement, the braid swinging forward over her shoulder. Her face at this angle, in this light, with this distance between us. I have been photographing this expedition for 11 days, and I have a professional relationship with the rendering of light on faces, and I am not going to say what this does. She says, "Look at me properly." The word properly. The way she uses it. Not look at me, not look here, but look at me properly. As though I have been looking at her in some qualified or approximate way, which is both accurate and not something I was aware she had noticed, which tells me she has been watching me look at her in that approximate way for at least some portion of the last 11 days. The thought of this, that she has been watching, that the looking was mutual in some way I did not register clearly enough, does something to the inside of my sternum that lands several inches below my lungs. I look at her properly. This is a different act from what I have been doing. Looking at her properly means not categorizing, not filing, not assigning the observation to a professional drawer. It means letting the observation be what it is. Her face across the table in the warm desk lamplight, the braid loose at the end, the quarter zip open, the black underwire bra at the open collar, the bare arm on the map, the hand over mine. It means registering that she is watching me look and has been watching me look and is watching me now, and that this watching is deliberate, and that the thing she is watching for is whether I will be honest about what looking at her properly produces. I am honest about it. I am honest about it in the sense that I do not look away, do not return to the map, do not find something in the middle distance to address. I look at her, and I hold the look with the care of someone who has decided that looking away is now the more costly option. Something in her face changes. Very small. The specific change that happens when someone receives confirmation of something they suspected but needed to see confirmed. A settling, a release of something that had been held very still. Her jaw releases by a degree so small I would not have seen it if I had not been looking at her properly for the last 11 seconds. Her eyes, which have been steady and attentive in the professional register, go different by a quality I don't have an instrument for, but which my body responds to immediately and without my permission. She's still leaning forward. Her face is closer to the table's surface than it was. Her hand is still over mine, and the heel of her palm has moved, just barely, just by a millimeter, into something that is not quite a grip, but is no longer simply a placement. The Adriatic outside, the wave interval, the single laptop fan, nothing else. She straightens slowly and lets her hand slide off mine, not quickly, not with distance, but with the deliberate pace of someone who has made a decision and is enacting it at the speed the decision deserves. Her fingers trail across the back of my hand as she withdraws, the specific warmth of the trailing contact registering in the skin of my hand with a precision that my nervous system stores before my mind processes it. And then she is upright in her chair and looking at me, and her face has the quality of someone who has just confirmed something important and is now determining what to do with the confirmation. She stands up. She doesn't go anywhere. She stands at her side of the table and looks at the reef map for a moment, the braid over her shoulder, the bare arm where she rolled the sleeve, the heat of her in the room registering from across the table the same way it registers in the water when she is 2 feet away at depth. Then she moves to my side of the table. Not around the table, around its full length. She crosses the corner of it 3 steps until she's standing at my right shoulder and the geometry of the room has shifted entirely. She was across from me and now she's beside me. And the configuration of beside her after 11 days of across from her produces something in my chest that I would describe, if I were being honest with myself, as relief, which is both surprising and not. She stands at my shoulder and looks at the reef map from above, her arms crossed, and I look at the reef map from my seated position, and we are not looking at the reef map. She says, "Tell me the last day you weren't thinking about this." The phrasing, "tell me," not when was, not do you remember. Tell me as a directive, as something she is requiring of me. And this about this, not about the expedition or the reef system or the data. About this, which she has not named, but which does not require naming, because we are both in the same room with the same 11 days of evidence, and neither of us is confused about what this refers to. I think about it. Not in the way that suggests I am uncertain, but in the way that suggests I am going to answer her honestly, which requires me to locate the actual day, rather than a convenient approximation of it. Day 3, I say. She goes very still above me. Day 3 was the first full survey day, the Northern Reef section, a dive that ran to 62 minutes because the coral density was exceptional and neither of us wanted to surface. I had been shooting the reef from 2 meters above the survey line, and she had been below me on the line, and at 51 minutes she had looked up at me through the green-blue water with her dive light and made the signal for check your depth gauge, which I already knew I should check and which I resented and then did not resent because the look on her face when she made it was the first time I saw that particular expression. Focused and specific and carrying something underneath the focus that I did not have a category for yet. I had been thinking about that look ever since. Day 3, I say again, in case she didn't hear, though the station is completely quiet and she heard. Her arms uncross, the hand that had been over mine on the reef map, the right hand, warm, the heel of her palm, comes to my right collarbone, not a grip, a placement. The heel of her palm at the top of my sternum below the collarbone, fingers spread slightly with the same specific quality of deliberate stillness she brought to the hand over mine on the map. I feel it through the charcoal Henley. I feel the warmth of it, the weight of it, the way it settles against my collarbone and does not move. My breathing, which had been, again, something I was making deliberate choices about, makes a decision I was not consulted on. She moves to stand in front of me, then to my other side. Then she is behind my chair, and her hands are at both my collarbones now. Both palms, both warm, both still. And she leans down until her face is close to the level of my collarbone, and the ivory silk slip bra and the warm skin above it. And I feel her breath across the top of my chest, warm in the station warm air, a specific warmth that is different from the ambient warmth, a breath warmth that is exactly as warm as a person and no warmer, and what it does to the skin it passes over is not something I have a clinical category for. She is above me. Both hands at my collarbones, one arm would be braced against the back of the chair if the chair had the architecture for it, and instead her arm is there, the architecture of it, the physical fact of being surrounded by the specific decision of both her hands and her warmth and her breath across the skin above the ivory bra. I can smell her, the scent that has been the scent of this expedition for 11 days, cedar and salt water, and something that is specifically her at the end of a dive day, close enough at the end of day 4 that I had spent the surface interval memorizing it without intending to. She smells like the sea and like that specific cedar warmth, and at this proximity, the scent is not ambient. It is the entire atmosphere. My own breath in the station quiet is, I would describe it as controlled. It is not controlled. It is something I am attempting and mostly failing, and I am aware of the sound of it, audible in the station quiet. And I am aware that she can hear it too, because her face is 8 inches from my collarbone, and the room has nothing in it but wave intervals and one laptop fan and whatever my breathing is doing. Her mouth at my jaw. The warmth of it, the warmth of her mouth at the hinge of my jaw, Temperature differential between the station warm air and that specific contact exact and involuntary, and registering through the entire surface of the jaw and into the back of the neck and down into the sternum in a slow, specific wave that has nothing to do with ambient temperature. She is unhurried. The word for what she is doing is unhurried in the way that 11 days is unhurried, in the way that knowing something for 11 days and not saying it is unhurried, a patience that is not passive, that has been accumulating, that is now moving at the pace it has decided on. Her grip at my collarbones changes. Not harder, different. A grip that was neutral in its quality becomes not neutral. Not more force, but more intent, a change in meaning rather than degree. And I feel it happen against the skin of my collarbone through the fabric, and I feel the change as a physical fact, as data, as something my body receives and files immediately in the only category that has ever been appropriate for it. The category I have been refusing to use for 11 days, because using it would have required me to acknowledge what the filing meant. The thing is this: I have been in the water with her every day for 11 days. I have been 2 meters away from her at depth and 1 meter from her when we surfaced, and 18 inches from her at this table every evening, and I have trusted her with my physical safety in the water the way you only trust someone you have had 11 days to know in the specific and unglamorous way field proximity produces knowing. I know how she moves in the water, and how she calls measurements, and what her handwriting looks like, and how she takes her coffee, and what she does when she finds something on the reef that surprises her. The stillness that comes first, before she reaches for the collection jar. A stillness of absolute focus. I know all of this. And she has her mouth at my jaw and both hands at my collarbones. And her breath is warm across my skin, and the station is quiet except for the Adriatic, and I know all of this, and it is not enough, and it is too much, and it is exactly the amount of knowing required to understand what is happening between us down to its specific weight and temperature, and what it is going to cost me to hold still inside it. I don't hold still. I turn my face toward her, the small, deliberate degree that the direction of her mouth against my jaw suggests. And her mouth finds the corner of my jaw and then moves, and I make a sound that I would categorize as controlled, and which is not, which is the sound of 11 days of careful organization being released from the pressure it has been under, which is both quieter and more specific than I expected. Her hands at my collarbones do not move. They hold, still and warm, and with the intent that replaced neutral when I told her day 3. And her mouth is moving with the unhurried pace that I am coming to understand is her essential quality, the quality I had called exactitude in the professional context, in which I am recontextualizing now in real time at 12:24 in the morning in a field station 12 kilometers from the nearest settlement, while the Adriatic moves through its interval outside, and the dive log sits on the table with tonight's entry unwritten. She says against my jaw, "You've been in every frame," the same sentence. The one from the cold open, the one that had arrived before I had the context to understand it fully. You've been in every frame, not a complaint, not an observation, a disclosure. She had been looking at my work for 11 days and finding me in it the way you find something you were looking for before you knew you were looking. And she is telling me this now with her mouth at my jaw and her hands at my collarbones and the warm, specific weight of her against my back, and I feel it. The disclosure, the weight of it, what it cost her to say it in the register she said it in, which is the same register she uses for things she has decided to say before she says them. The things she decides deserve the correct approach. I had been in every frame. She had not moved the photo back. I reach up and put my hand over her right hand on my collarbone, not to move it, not to change its placement, but to cover it the way she covered mine on the reef map with the same specific, deliberate quality. Palm to the back of her hand, warm against warm. She goes still above me, the particular stillness of someone receiving confirmation, the settling, the thing held very still, releasing by a degree. Then her hand under mine turns, unhurried, until we are palm to palm against my collarbone, her fingers lacing through mine. And this is the simplest possible thing, and it is the most honest exchange I have had with another person in longer than I can currently calculate. Her mouth moves from my jaw to the edge of my throat. I stop performing breathing as controlled. The warmth of her mouth at the side of my throat, moving with the patience that is not passivity, but accumulated intent, is registering in my chest and in my hands and in the specific part of my sternum that I would describe as where certainty lives when it arrives, and I have been here before, in the moment of certainty at depth when you stop fighting a current and let it take you where it's going, the moment when resisting costs more than moving. This is that moment. I stop resisting the current. I let it take me where it is going. She has both hands over mine now, the second hand coming to join the first at my collarbone, both of us holding this together. Her warmth above me, and the specific scent of cedar and salt water, and the end of a dive day at close range. The station at 12:24 in the morning, completely still, except for the wave interval and the laptop fan, and both are breathing, which is no longer something either of us is performing as controlled. She lifts her head. Her mouth moves from my throat, and she straightens, slightly, and looks at me. Not from across the table, but from above. From the specific angle of beside and above. Close enough that the quality of her looking is a physical event in the front of my chest, where both our hands are, and she is looking at me with an expression I have not seen on her face in 11 days. Not the professional precision, not the watchful attention, something that has been underneath those things for longer than tonight, something that has been the undercurrent, the thing both of us have been breathing carefully around. She says, "The dialogue doesn't have an entry for tonight yet." I say, "No." She says, "I'm not sure what category to put it in." This is the driest possible thing she could have said at this specific moment, and she knows it, and I know it, and I look at her and feel something that takes me a second to identify as the particular quality of happiness that arrives when someone is exactly who you understood them to be. She is looking at me with the warmth she keeps beneath the exactitude, and with something that is not quite a smile, but is adjacent to one. The expression she makes when something has surprised her in a direction she approves of. I say, field observation, anomalous event, requires further documentation. She looks at me for a long moment. She says, "Yes." And then she straightens fully and crosses to the station's single window. And I watch her, the braid over her shoulder, the quarter zip, the bare arm, and she stands at the window with her arms crossed, looking at the Adriatic, which is black and very close outside, and which reflects nothing but moves through its interval with the constancy it has maintained for 11 nights. I sit at the table. I look at the reef map, partly rolled at one corner from when she moved it. I look at the dive log, open to tonight's page, the entry blank. I look at the underwater photo that has been on her side of the table for 4 days, and which is still on her side of the table, and which neither of us has moved. The room is warm and quiet. She stands at the window for perhaps 2 minutes, long enough that the Adriatic completes 3 full intervals, and I watch her back and the shape of her in the station light, and I do not say anything. And she does not say anything, and the silence between us is not the silence of 10 days ago. The professional quiet of 2 researchers in close quarters, maintaining appropriate distance. It is a different quality of silence. It has weight and warmth, and it is specifically the silence of 2 people who have confirmed something and are deciding together, without speaking, what the confirmation changes and what it doesn't. She turns from the window. She crosses to the table. 3 steps, direct, with the economy of motion she brings to everything. And she reaches across to where I have the reef map, partly in my hands, beginning to roll it, and she takes it from me. She takes it from my hands with the same unhurried quality, sets it flat on the table, and then she holds both my hands between hers. Not a grip, not a direction. Both of my hands between both of hers, warm on both sides, held with the specific quality of stillness that is not absence, but its opposite, that contains something, that is holding something in place. She holds them for 6 seconds. I count without meaning to. The way you count intervals in the water when you need an anchor. 6 seconds of her hands warm around mine, neither of us speaking. The Adriatic outside, the laptop screen still open and cool blue. The desk lamp warm gold on the map we are no longer discussing. She releases my hands. She moves to the window one more time, but not to stand at it, to set down her coffee cup on the sill, which is where she always puts her coffee in the mornings when she's watching the water come up in the light. She sets it down, and then she sets mine down beside it, both cups facing the Adriatic, both facing the same direction. She goes back to her side of the table. She opens the dive log to tonight's page and picks up the pen. The same pen she has used every evening, black ink, the handwriting that is her character made physical, and she writes the date and the time at the top of the page. Day 11, 12:24, and then she stops. She holds the pen above the page for a moment, not writing, looking at what she has written. I watch her. The dive log is open, and the entry is the date and the time and nothing after it. And I watch her decide what counts as data. She is thinking about it, with the focused stillness she brings to things that deserve the correct approach. And her pen is above the page, and outside the Adriatic moves through its interval, and the station is warm and quiet, and we have 3 more days. She writes something, 2 lines, brief. She closes the log. She does not angle it away from me. In the morning, when the light comes through the station's east window and turns the room from lamp-warm to pale and specific, I see that the coffee cups on the windowsill are both still facing the Adriatic. Hers on the left, mine on the right. Both facing the same direction, both set down with the same particular care, and neither of us had discussed where to put them or which way to face them, and they are facing the same way regardless. The underwater photo that was on her side of the table is on my side now, face up. I don't remember either of us moving it. I'm not sure it matters who did. The frame is the one from day 4, Eastern Quadrant dive, 22 meters down, her hand raised in the signal for something significant. The reef behind her, in the green-blue, specific to that depth. The light from her dive torch cutting across the coral density at exactly the angle that made the image work. She had her hand up. I had printed that frame. She had kept it on her side of the table for 4 days and had not moved it back, and now it is on my side, and Mara is at the table with the dive log open to day 12's page and her pen in her hand. And she looks up when I come in from the back corridor, and the expression on her face in the early light is the expression she makes when something has surprised her in a direction she approves of. The warmth beneath the exactitude, the thing that has been there since day 3, and which I was not yet naming correctly until last night at 12:24, when she put her hands at my collarbones and her mouth at my jaw and told me I had been in every frame. I have 3 more days in this station with her. 3 more dives, 3 more evenings with the reef map on the table between us and the dive log in her handwriting. The dive log entry for night 11, which I read over her shoulder this morning the way I have read every entry for 11 evenings. The date, the time, and 2 lines below it in that exact unhurried script. Weather, clear. Visibility, exceptional. Anomalous observation, field station, 12:24. Requires further documentation. She watches me read it. I look up. She looks at me with the warmth that is beneath everything, the current that has been there since day 3, and does not explain what she wrote and does not need to. And outside the Adriatic is very close and bright in the morning light, the same water we have been in together every day, moving through its interval with the constancy it maintains whether you're watching or not.